Robots and self-driving cars may be in our future, but there will be a lot of bumps along the way, as seen by some recent decisions that have killed some robots. Also, Google makes a quantum leap, and Lisa Simpson scores a game-winning touchdown on Monday Night Football. We're going to talk about these stories and more on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. The guy behind the monitors is Chris. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Looking good, my friend. And joining us as guest co-host for this week's show is Lindsay O'Donnell. She is a cybersecurity journalist who has worked for news sites such as Decipher and ThreatPost. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, so let's just jump into the stories for this week. A wide variety, not super. I don't know. Great, I guess. I don't know. Let's just forget about that. Let's just jump into the first story. I'm calling this episode the Dead Robot episode because there are two stories. First of all, General Motors has decided to scrap its Cruise robotaxi program. Basically, this has happened after nearly a decade and $10 billion spent in development. GM said that basically the time and costs needed to scale the business and rising competition is causing them to basically scrap this. The company said it plans to realign its autonomous driving strategy and give priority to development of advanced driver assistance systems, which take over the steering and other functions in certain situations and are common on new vehicles today. The automaker said it would continue to develop fully autonomous technology for personal vehicles and build on the progress of its Super Cruise system, a hands-off, eyes-on driving feature that the company introduced several years ago. GM said it owns about 90% of Cruise and intends to buy out the remaining investors, and then will combine the technical teams from Cruise and GM into a single effort to advance autonomous and assisted driving. But basically, I think that they see competition from Waymo, which I think was the Google-backed, or it's Alphabet-backed, basically. That's the self-driving car company that's leading the market, and then Tesla is the other big, cyber taxi, robo-taxi developer. So, I did cover the robotic space for a few years, and autonomous driving was considered a robot car, where they're calling them robo-taxis at this point because, Uber and Lyft, they are spending a lot of money on just drivers. So they wanted to get to that self-driving format. It is interesting to see a major car manufacturer just basically giving up. And I think Ford gave up a few years ago too.
I think all of them are.
Yeah. I mean, basically you're just left with Tesla and Waymo at this point. Anything jump out at you on this story, Lindsay?
It's interesting, autonomous driving right now is a really tough nut to crack. And, the reason for that is consumers don't fully trust it yet. And I remember, I think a couple years ago, like 2018, 2019, I went to this MIT forum where they talked about security and consumer trust of autonomous driving. And, one of the concerns was around a mistrust of the experience itself. And obviously we've seen reports of collisions, sometimes even fatal ones, involving driverless cars over the years. And, including, I think the report mentioned last year, one with GM's own robo-taxi, which I hadn't heard about, but that's pretty indicative of kind of troubles there. So, in my opinion, that forum was, a couple of years ago, but still right now we're kind of far away from that trust. Now, all that to say, we're still seeing a lot of competition. As you mentioned, we have Waymo, we've got Tesla's Cybercab coming down the line in a few years. So, from my understanding, it potentially is ramping up in terms of how we'll be able to better have an understanding and better trust of how this experience carries out. But I'm curious what you guys think. But when I've gone to San Francisco, my experience with the Waymo is that, or my understanding is that they're almost like a little gimmicky. If you want to drive Waymo, it's like an experience ride. But
right.
If you want to go to the airport, you're going to call Lyft. So I'm curious what you guys think.
I think some of them are available to drive on highways, but most of them drive on slower streets or street level streets. So you're not getting onto a highway with a lot of them. I think some of them are trying to get onto highway driving. And they're in big cities or areas that have really great weather. So, That's why you see a lot in California and Arizona. But I don't even see a lot of robo taxis in Florida, probably because of the rain. And obviously here in the Northeast, we're not getting them because of rain, snow, and Massachusetts drivers is my other third joke, my go-to joke. So yeah, a lot of the development has been hit or miss depending on what state you're in and what the regulations are in that area. The first fatality that happened with this was 2018, so that's 6 years ago, and that was Uber. And that was where a safety driver that was in the car was just not paying attention, and somebody jumped out in front of the car before the safety driver could apply the brakes correctly. And then Uber, because of that, they just be like, yeah, we're getting out. And so they instead are paying other companies to develop the technologies. But it also feels like consumers with this trust issue, they feel like that they have to have 100% reliability and availability, and it has to be a perfect experience versus allowing for a human driver to make an occasional mistake that might cause a fender bender. But I think we're putting too high of a standard on autonomous cars. The other problem too is a lot of people that I would talk to in the autonomous industry would say we could have autonomous cars all right now if everybody else just stopped driving.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
And getting from point A to point B is never going to happen because you've got people that love to drive and will never give that up. My commute could go.
It's the freedom
my evening commute could go from an hour and a half to an hour or less if we were all just in robo taxis and robo cars. But that's a pipe dream.
It's also having the freedom to drive. I want to drive. I don't want to be chauffeured around by some, AI robot.
Right. So you ever, Lindsay, have you ever ridden in one of these cars? Like, have you gone to a conference and they've been offering free rides or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I actually haven't. But I mean, I've been to conferences where they have offered that opportunity, and it's not that I haven't wanted to. I just never have, had the experience. But I think I would. I mean, I think that it doesn't bother me. Would it bother you? Like, do you have
the last time I did, the last time I did this was I was in Vegas, and it was still the CES. It was still the early days of, and you basically went in one block. Like, they just did a block around the convention center.
Yeah.
And the traffic was so slow because it was the convention center. So, and there was a safety driver sitting behind the wheel so that if anything did come up that they felt that the car wouldn't stop on time, he was ready. But just me and the car, no, I haven't gotten in one yet.
I've driven in one.
Driven. You've
ridden. I've ridden in one.
No safety driver.
Safety driver.
Yeah.
No. So obviously there was one of the times was at a convention.
Yep.
Right, in Vegas, and then another one was in Singapore. We were interviewing a startup in Singapore.
Yep.
This autonomous driving company, I can't remember, it's like 5-6 years ago, right? They decided to put their startup in Singapore because obviously their traffic is much different than the traffic over here in the US. It's much smaller. There's not that many cars.
Right.
So they're able to really do whatever they want to test their autonomous vehicles. And we drove in it, and I remember it almost got into an accident. So it's and it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of gimmicky. Well, back then it was still very kind of gimmicky because everything's a predetermined path, right? And I would not want to ride in one today. I don't trust other people on the road and also the AI. There's just no way.
Yeah.
There's too many factors. Like, that's the thing, is there's so many factors on the road that can go wrong. And now we're going to put trust in this AI software to safely get you around everybody else.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
And again, that's why I think you see them in cities where you're never going to get up to 50 miles or 65 miles an hour, where things can go really bad really quickly with a lot of these different things.
Things will just go very bad very slowly. Like, even in cities, like with the congestion and stuff like that, it's like, did you see what happened in Boston? The
No.
the tunnel.
Oh, with the flooding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the
I saw
flooding.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gee, could you imagine your autonomous EV going through that
Oh,
and
it
knowing
would-
what to do? It's
No, it
not going to
wouldn't.
have
Yeah.
it's not going to have visual aid on the ground. It's not going to be able to read the lines on the road. There's no lines. It's
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And
That's
especially
a really
with
good point.
and especially with snow. Like
Yep.
you're going to have all your markers blocked. How is it going to be able to navigate through that?
There was this one company I interviewed with it was a Cambridge-based company that was using military technology to scan under the road, so it could tell. It was like sonar that could tell where the road was versus like where the pavement was versus where the lines are. I think a lot of these computer vision cars would try to look for those lines on the side, but if they're not there, they have to determine, is this an actual road or am I now off-roading? Because I think that they were developing military technology for allowing like a tank or a Jeep type thing to go off-roading, and they needed to know where the best path was versus just hitting a tree.
It's just like when you think about it, it's a lot of factors that go into play. It's like people think, oh, you need to drive here to there. Oh, it's not a big deal. Driving's easy, but it's like how long have people been driving for?
Yeah.
Years and years and years. We make it look easy, but when you really think about it, it's like we're actually doing a lot. You're scanning the road, you're looking to your left, your right, behind you, you're looking all over the place, and you need to be able to make these split decision moves and stuff. And it's like I can't.
Yeah, I think
trust in
GM at the end, it was just like we're just spending so much money and not getting a big return on that at some point, and it feels like a lot of these companies are just ceding that market to other companies that are ahead. So as long as Google / Alphabet wants to keep giving money towards Waymo, then they'll continue to develop. And Elon Musk with Tesla, of course, he wants to be the one that takes over the world with these cars. But he has problems too, because he keeps calling his technology autopilot, and it's not fully autonomous. I think they're getting closer, maybe with this Cybercab would be closer to full autonomy, but there's a lot of issues there. So anyway, that's yeah. So again, it comes back to Lindsay. It comes back to your comment about building trust, and if companies keep going under that are developing this technology, that's not going to help with the trust factor at all.
Well, and what sticks out to me too, that was interesting, kind of related to that trust is, it seems like, a lot of the winners in this space aren't legacy car manufacturers who already have that trust with their consumers, right? So you mentioned, Waymo, Tesla, like those aren't the legacy ones that you think of. Like if I'm going with a car that I'm going to trust, an autonomous vehicle, and it has like the GM brand slapped on it or someone else, then you would have thought that they would have had kind of the edge there in terms of brand and the marketing. So yeah, just something to think about.
And I can't even remember, again, it's been a while since I've covered the space, but I can't remember if Toyota and Honda were even in this space at all. And they might be in Japan, but there's nothing here that in the US that they're developing.
And
Hyundai has one.
in terms of EV,
An actual, no, not an
autonomous.
EV. Oh, autonomous ability. And even, you know what? I don't even think, I'm thinking with Hyundai, that's an EV. But they're, those things are all converging too, where you're building an autonomous car that's electric, and then that can be used as a taxi or leased out to make money for the owner if the owner buys it. But you're not even going to see consumer level stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to move on to the second story, which is related to again robotics. This is this is an interesting story. It's also very sad. So there's a robot named Moxie, which is developed by a company called Embodied, and basically this $800 robot companion aimed at children is basically going to quote unquote die. The blight of internet-connected devices continues as Moxie, a cute AI-powered robot for children, is being killed. The company behind it, Embodied, explained on an FAQ page that an expected funding round fell through at the last minute, and it can no longer afford to remain in business. So Moxie is joining a lot of other devices that have been bricked or work a lot less effectively because they require cloud connectivity and or lose support from manufacturers. The story is made sadder because the Moxie is aimed at children ages 5 to 10 years old, and is specifically specifically marketed as a trusted companion for them to discuss their interests and emotions. It can also play games, teach educational lessons, and tell stories. Well, up until now, Embodied says basically Moxie relies on cloud connectivity for its core features and will not function once services end, which could happen at any day now. So a lot of people are going on to TikTok and Instagram with videos, trying to say like, my kid is heartbroken. We've got this thing and it's no longer going to work. And this robot was a member of the family, so to speak, with a lot of these kids. And I guess, a lot of the kids that have emotional support, and some of them are geared towards kids with autism. I've seen that there's been a couple of companies, again, I've covered in this space that use robots to interact with people, children with autism. So, I just think, I feel bad for the company, but I also feel bad for all of these customers that went through this. Again, showing once again, if you're on the cutting edge of something, you've got to keep that in mind that at some point that the product and the service could go away. I mean, you see this in gaming too, where a company will just stop providing, gaming support, and then you're left with a game you can't play. So anything else jump out at you on this one, Lindsay?
I mean, I was just, I think it calls to a question of like what happens when tech dies. Is like, it reminded me back in, I think it was like 2020 that Sonos, if you remember this, they stopped pushing updates for their older products. And there was just an absolute storm of like angry customers complaining. And obviously this is different because you also have those emotional ties there, and it's literal children that are, using these in some cases, like an emotional or therapeutic function. So, but, it just goes back to that question, how do we, like, what happens when technology, like, dies?
Yeah.
Well,
I think that what, you got something to say, Chris, or you want me to go?
Well, I was just going to say, I think this is a perfect example of the service business model. Yeah. Right? Like, when we want to go see a movie or watch a TV show, we use a service for that now. If we want to play games today, you have to download the client, right? And it's a service. You don't actually have a physical copy of the game. Like, everything's a service these days. And so, like, when they do decide to go, well, there goes your product you paid for. It's bricked. You can't do anything with it.
It's almost like you're not even paying for something now. You're just leasing it. You're just subscribing to it.
And it's the same thing. I mean, I look at DVDs, Blu-rays, and everything. It's like, we don't own our things anymore.
Right.
Even our phones. Our phones are, well, they're being financed out. You can't actually buy it physically. You could, but chances are a lot of people don't. But,
But if it...
Yeah, I don't know.
But then why do we keep doing it then? Like, why, as human beings, why do we keep... Is it just because that's the only option available to us? And
well,
it's the convenience. It's the ease of use.
It's convenience, and I think... I hate to say it, I just think people don't care.
Yeah.
They're not thinking long term.
Like, I'll give you an example on the streaming media side. I own a copy of the Pee Wee Herman Christmas special, which is the world's greatest Christmas special, by the way. If you've ever seen it. It was from 1987, had a boatload of stars. I have the physical copy of the DVD, but I was more excited that it's now available on Peacock. Because now I can just turn on my TV, load it up, rather than go searching for the DVD in my little cabinet somewhere. And then I think my only DVD player that I have now is through my PlayStation, because we've gotten rid of the DVD players and the Blu-ray players because we don't do that anymore. So I guess if it goes off the service next year, well then I'll plug it back in. But it's just convenient for a lot of these people. But again, coming back to the robot, I think if you are marketing something towards children, I think you need to take that extra step to wonder about like what will happen if we can't continue to support this. And maybe they need to create an offline mode, for example, and somehow keep that running. Maybe you'll get a bunch of, because sometimes with games they do that. They seed the IP to a group of gamers, and then you can have them running a server so that you could still play the original version. I think Warcraft does that for one of their original games. Mm-hmm. Any additional thoughts, Lindsay?
No, I think that's a good point. Yeah. This is something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to another story here. Google basically is claiming that a quantum computing milestone, but at the moment, the tech can't solve any real world problems yet. Google unveiled a new chip that it says it marks a major breakthrough in the field of quantum computing, an area which is seen as the next frontier for many tech companies. However, while Google's achievements have been noted for advancing the field, experts are saying that quantum computing still has no real world uses yet. This is a quote from a CNBC article. "We need a ChatGPT moment for quantum," according to Francesco Ricciuti, associate at venture capital firm Runa Capital, referencing OpenAI's chatbot that has been credited with driving the boom in artificial intelligence. But then he also said, well, this is probably not that. So it's like, great. Proponents of quantum computing claim it will be able to solve problems that current computers cannot. In classical computing, information is stored in bits. Each bit is either a 1 or a 0. Quantum computing uses quantum bits or qubits, which can be 0, 1, or something in between. The theory is that quantum computers will then be able to process much larger volumes of data, leading to potential breakthroughs in areas like medicine, science, and finance. I've also seen some stories that say quantum computing can be used by the security industry to actually break encryption, the current level of encryption, and they're warning that if quantum computing moves forward, that security industry is going to have to be like, all right, this encryption that we were relying on for so many years, now we have to think about something else because these computers might be able to do this stuff faster. Is this a whole lot of nothing because there's no real world use for it, or is this something that we should be talking about, as a major achievement?
I feel like this field is very much still in its infancy, but it's been like that for years.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a while. And I guess the article frames it like, how can you consumerize it, I guess, a little bit, if they're talking about that ChatGPT moment. And that's kind of the issue here is, if we're talking about qubits and quantum error correction. And, if you go to your family at, your holiday dinner table and say, hey, like this new Willow, it has 105 qubits, like no one's going to know what you're talking about or
right.
like what that means. So, I think it's going to get there eventually. And I've been following quantum computing for a little while, and, the cybersecurity impact, I think you talked about it a little bit there, but like the, U.S. government is coming out and saying that, it would be able to break current encryption methods in the somewhat near future, I guess. I think last I read, it was like 2030, they were saying. So, we're still somewhat a ways out, but like, this is something that, that they are investing in and we need to prepare for it. But like, yeah, I don't think we're going to see real world impacts for a little while on this one. So, it's a very technical topic still.
In the story, they said Willow performed a computation in under 5 minutes that would take one of today's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion years, or, and then there's a whole bunch of ones and zeros that would take that many years. How does it know that the answer is correct when they do a calculation like that? It's not like this goes beyond my limited knowledge of what this is in terms of how fast something can do. Does it mean at some point that a quantum computer is going to be able to figure out, an ending number for pi? Like there's something like that would be amazing. Like if they actually said and I've heard jokes about this where the pi ends in 4. Like no, it doesn't. But it they keep calculating the length of pi to be, 18 billion or however many billion numbers, is that what that's going to be used for? And then how does that relate to something that, we'd be like, well, that's great, but then what are you actually going to do with it? And so then you get these pie in the sky things like, okay, well, it's going to, find cures for diseases, and it's going to, be able to chart the universe. It's going to be able to create an autonomous car because of the calculations needed for that. So, and I thought that's where we were heading with artificial intelligence, but now apparently there's been a lot of people recently that have been talking a lot about quantum computing. I think it needs a name change, to be honest, because you start using the word quantum and then you try to explain ones and zeros. The only thing you can do is the whole Schrodinger's cat thing with the box, and it's either alive or dead. And I still don't understand how the chip then is able to actually physically compute a bit if it's not a 1 and it's not a 0 and it's somewhere in between. That just seems very random to me, and I suppose that's the point. It just needs a better marketing campaign almost. Maybe that's what we need. Better explanation of what this thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Chris, on this, or we want to skip this one?
Yeah. Next one. Yeah.
All right. We're going to go back. All right. So now we're going from quantum back to artificial intelligence. A lot of news this week about OpenAI releasing Sora, which is its buzzy AI video generation tool. Basically, they have released the AI video generation model, and it basically works similarly to their DALL-E image generation tool. Type in a prompt, and type out a desired scene, and Sora will return a high definition video clip. Sora can also generate video clips inspired by still images and extend existing videos or fill in missing frames. The Microsoft-backed artificial intelligence startup, which burst into the mainstream a few years ago thanks to the viral popularity of ChatGPT, introduced Sora in February, but they had very, very limited access to it because, again, with video, they're really concerned about guardrails and making sure that you're not creating horrible videos and horrible things that are out there, mainly from the misinformation, disinformation side of things. But if you go down some of the dark web, there's already some stuff out there. But OpenAI doesn't want to be attached to those types of technologies. All right, so OpenAI said users do not need to pay extra for the tool. But if you do pay that new $200 a month subscription, which I think they're calling it premium, you will get the ability to do more videos and higher resolution. I think for the people that pay $20 a month, I think you get 50 prompts per month. And then it's like a 10-second clip or something like that. And it's not I think it's 480p on resolution. However, at the moment, because so many people are trying to use it, you have to create a separate account, and they've basically disabled account creation access. So I haven't been able to play with it yet, even though I do pay the $20 a month. So, Chris, do you have the homepage up that shows some of those videos? Yeah, like when I look at the examples that they put on their homepage, they don't actually tell you the prompt. They just show you some of the results. So it's possible these are the best of the best, and a lot of it just looks like B-roll to me. So. Is this impressive, a step forward? I think Google has announced that they're going to be doing something very soon. So you will start seeing a wave of video generated competitors, but also the time it takes to generate a video is also very expensive. And we're still at that frame, like that's why they're charging the $200 a month for the premium stuff. Lindsay, and you had you went and saw some of the stuff that was being produced on Twitter, right?
Yeah. I mean, overall, it does look pretty good, and I expect, as you mentioned, continue to kind of work through the kinks and everything like that. The pricing hopefully will go down over time, but one thing that was funny was they're still trying to kind of work through certain issues, and I saw, and I think I sent over some funny videos of people trying to generate gymnasts doing flips, and couldn't quite keep up, like their head was where their feet were supposed to be. It was kind of a very trippy outcome. I saw a few fake historical videos. There was kind of one with Plateau speaking, and then there were some weird but funny ones. Like I saw a pelican on a bike and some flying jellyfish, and given the price of this and the fact that you have a finite amount of inputs, I thought it was kind of funny that people were doing things to generate those types of things. But it was pretty fun to look through it all, and I think this is. It's really cool. What I do want to see more fully addressed is the misinformation front of things and social media, and how we're going to keep tabs on these types of videos. And it's something we've already been dealing with deep fakes and these other kind of even just plain images and even just news articles. So I think, as you mentioned before, Keith, the video generation part of this is going to introduce new issues with misinformation. And I know I went back and looked at kind of what OpenAI is doing in this area, and they do have restrictions in place to prevent harmful content or celebrity likeness or things like that. But I think I would like to see more of a partnership between them and social media organizations to approach this from more of a united front, given that, previously different types of misinformation content haven't been tackled until, after they already had, companies realized that they had an impact, a negative impact.
Yeah, I think the misinformation stuff, I think we were so worried about it with the election this year that I think so many people had their red flags up and they were ready for something, versus I think that issue came about when that guy posted the picture of the Pope in the puffy jacket. And that was so good that everyone thought it was real. And then he fooled a lot of people. Whereas that, I didn't see a lot of video footage where people were like, oh, well, this is real or this is fake. There wasn't this big wave of images and stuff during the election, as far as I can tell. But again, I also didn't have a lot of radar up on that front. Yeah, and I know that there's going to be groups of people and companies that will try to generate, either a commercial or a shorter video clip that, then you add on audio and then you use AI to create the voiceover, and they will create something. But at this point, it might not. You would still be able to tell that this was generated, or they'll announce that it was generated with AI. And I think that, and again, Hollywood will have its ears up and be like, yeah, well, please don't do this because I don't think you're ever going to go to a fully AI created animated feature at this point, or not in the near future, but maybe down the road. Yeah. But I don't know. Any
to your point too, Go ahead. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I do think that people, or, many people are more critical and scrutinizing content online. Like, for instance, the Boston Tunnel, video that Chris, you had mentioned earlier. Like, when I first saw that last night or whenever I saw it, I was like, is this real? Like, what is going, when was this taken? Was this AI, or what's going on here? So I do think that people are getting better at identifying misinformation.
Right.
But I think this is still a concern. But I also saw OpenAI said they're building tools to help detect these types of, they said misleading content. So a classifier that can tell if there was a video that was created by Sora. So I would be curious if, social media companies do kind of take those types of detection tools and we have an explicit thing that says this is AI generated, this video.
Right. Yeah. I just think it's something worth watching, and I'll know more about it or can relay on the experience once I get into the account and am able to kind of play around with it. I won't try to do anything stupid because there's a lot of people out there that will be trying to do things that are stupid, like getting it to do something and it not working. Because I'm sure there's going to be tons of stories on that. Once more and more people are allowed in, it just feels like at this point, it's almost, now I've got FOMO. I just feel like I really want to get this account access, but I'm willing to wait at least until after the holidays, I guess, to try it out. One more story I wanted to talk about was this Simpsons football game that happened on a recent Monday Night Football. Not so much because of the whole spectacle around it with Disney owning Fox and Fox running The Simpsons, but rather some of the technology that they were using to create it. No, we're going to skip this one. Chris, we're going to go to the next one. The Variety one?
Variety one. All right, let me find it.
Yeah, okay. Or just play the video, the little YouTube shorts.
I got it. I got it.
So The Simpsons had basically an NFL altcast or alternative broadcast, which blended entertainment with football, and basically they used animated Simpsons characters in 3D, which is weird looking enough, having been a fan of The Simpsons for 30 plus years. And then they took the live broadcast of the game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys. But what they did was then they played videos with sometimes they inserted Bart, Lisa, Homer, Ralph Wiggum was in one, and Milhouse was in another, replacing the players. But it was basically the live game, but just animated with these characters. And then regular football players too. Now there were two things that were different. One was that the angle that you see on a regular football game, you usually see the two player, the one team's on this side and one team's on this side, and then as you see the action, it goes. It's a horizontal, whereas the one on the bottom, like you see this one, it's the same play. This was CeeDee Lamb catching a touchdown. The view that you see on the bottom one is the animated one, which feels more like this is what you would see in a Madden football game or one of those football sports games. That's the first thing. The second thing was there was a 2-minute delay between the live action and then what was animated. So 2 minutes is actually pretty impressive. So, the producers of the game could decide, hey, this was a really good scoring play. So at this point, we'll put in Bart and Lisa. For normal plays where like a handoff that only goes 2 yards, they just had regular football players. But even that was still impressive, getting the animations to basically sync up with the real players. And they do that through technology, motion-enabled tracking technology from NFL's Next Gen Stats, Sony's Beyond Sports, and optical tracking from Sony's Hawkeye Innovations. So that is the part of the technology that really got me going, like, wow, that's really cool. There were other parts of the broadcast that I absolutely hated, and you could still watch it on Disney Plus. You can watch it for, I think, another 15 days or so. And then it's not gonna be available, but the other parts of the broadcast I hated was like they had commentators and they were making all sorts of Simpsons jokes that weren't very funny. They had other video segments where real NFL players were reacting to what their Simpsons character would look like. They had other parts of like Marge interviewed someone. That I don't care about any of that stuff. That was just filler, and it was not as interesting as just watching live action, but with the animated characters. So I didn't know I know that Chris is not a big sports fan, so I'm not sure if he watched any of this stuff. Lindsay, did you catch any of this? Did you see any of this? Was this impressive to you at all?
I thought so. I thought it was funny. I was trying to think of like other ways they could do this, like, maybe to like capture, other applications for this. Like I know like the NFL has certain things for kids. So like, what if you did like a cartoon style type thing? That's maybe not The Simpsons, but like something else that, for younger kids, side by side with this.
And this was also
kind of cool.
Yeah, this was also not the first time that something like this happened. I think Paramount, which owns Nickelodeon, did something last year during the playoffs with SpongeBob. So there was like a SpongeBob animated thing to show that it could be done too. This was I think a little higher profile because it was ESPN and Monday Night Football. And The Simpsons. I think that also part of the appeal to it. But yeah, I mean, I immediately started thinking of other applications for this. Could this be used in other sports? Could you do this with baseball? Could you do this with or UK football? So soccer. Could you do it with basketball, hockey? I think hockey might be too fast for something like that. To work, but you never know. I mean, there were so many people when in the early 90s that were playing NHL Sega, on the Sega system. That was the best video game hockey experience that a lot of people have ever played. So things like that. And they're even doing that, I think there's going to be a broadcast where it's whoever makes those football video games. So you can watch the entire game as if you were basically watching a live video game. I think that the applications could do that, certainly in sports. But then I started thinking about, well, what about other entertainment venues like a concert? Would that be interesting, or would it just be interesting to just watch a televised concert, that you couldn't get into? I don't know. I think that there are some applications down the road that we might see if this becomes successful. I just didn't like all the stupid commentary around it. I thought that was dumb.
I feel like your point about like maybe baseball, because I know they struggle, like the MLB struggles a lot with trying to make the games like move them
Yeah.
along, I guess. And so maybe like something there where they could have something as like almost to fill in the time a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of cool things you could do with it.
I mean, I know that there were some efforts out there when virtual reality was supposed to take off too, where you were using cameras and then presenting better camera angles for people that had VR headsets on it. But I and I know that the NFL has also been experimenting with different camera angles as well. But that whole interactivity part of it never took off because there just wasn't enough people. Plus, you're broadcasting to individuals versus just an entire audience seeing the same camera angle. Even with streaming platforms that are showing football games, you have to have an individual stream going to that one house versus just one stream that gets broadcast to everybody. So there's a lot of technology hurdles that still have to be achieved, but I think for at least for this part, it was entertaining. Now I might get bored with that too. Like, after I saw, that touchdown that Chris had shown, you watch it a few times, you're like, okay. And you can start telling if you're watching the broadcast, once they start putting in the Simpsons characters, it's going to be a big play. And so then it was. For just normal plays, they didn't do that, but it was still kind of fun. But I might get bored of it. Like I'd be like, okay, let's go back to the regular game at that point.
I mean, it almost looks like they just modded.
Switch to real people.
They just modded a Madden game and just mapped the characters to.
Yeah, well, that's still impressive though to do it with within 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You're just not impressed by anything today.
Well, I mean, they probably had some way they made it easy. Like, I don't know, but it does look like just a modded Madden game.
Right, but it's not simulating the movement on the game. It's just tracking the entire motion.
Yeah, they probably have sensors in all their shoes. They're probably just relaying that data back
it's all
models into the modded game or something.
Okay,
this is probably some easy way they're doing it.
All right, what if these were God of War characters or Space Marines? I think that's the latest game you're playing. Would that be impressive?
No. I mean, it's just football.
All right. Yeah, you're hard not to crack, Chris, because of your disinterest in a lot of sports. So we'll leave it at that. Lindsay, again, thanks again for joining us on the show this week. Some good stuff. Have a good holiday season.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure, and thanks you too.
All right. That's all the time we have for the show this week. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.